If you're so smart, then fix it yourself. 25 experts failed, but the waitress solved it. Dorothy Wilson never imagined her desperate words would become prophetic. The owner of Heritage House restaurant was on the verge of a nervous breakdown as she watched her century-old establishment nearing its end. The main oven had stopped working 3.5 months ago, and since then, 25 different specialists had tried and failed to fix it. Each consultation cost a fortune Dorothy could no longer afford. That's when Emily Parker, the 22-year-old waitress, timidly suggested she might take a look at the problem, prompting chef Thomas Williams to explode in fury. "If you're so smart, then fix the oven yourself," he shouted, his face red with anger. "But when you fail, I want you to apologize in front of all the staff." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. She had only worked at Heritage House for 8 months, ever since her mother, Margaret, passed away, leaving her alone in the world. Her waitress salary barely covered the rent for the tiny room at the back of a boarding house, but it was all she had. Thomas, with his 15 years of experience and culinary degree, never missed a chance to humiliate her. "Mrs. Wilson," Emily said, her voice trembling, "would you let me try?" Dorothy looked at the slender young woman, her brown hair always tied in a simple ponytail. At 73, she had already lost hope. Heritage House was all that remained of the culinary empire her late husband, Robert, had built in the historic district of Charleston. If it closed, she would lose not just her livelihood but also the home she lived in on the upper floors of the colonial building. "Sweetheart, we've had engineers, specialized technicians, even an antique equipment restorer from New York. If they couldn't fix it, please," Emily insisted. "I have nothing left to lose anyway." Thomas let out a bitter laugh. "Look at this. The waitress who can't even fry an egg right wants to play mechanic. Go ahead, girl. When you give up, maybe you'll learn your place." The other 4 kitchen staff exchanged uncomfortable glances. Michael, the sous chef, lowered his eyes. He knew Thomas was being cruel but didn't have the courage to confront him. Jennifer and Sarah, the kitchen assistants, whispered to each other. Only old George, the eldest of the group, gave Emily a subtle nod, as if to say, "Go for it." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. Emily approached the century-old oven that dominated the back wall of the kitchen. It was a magnificent piece, entirely cast iron, with ornamental details that showcased the craftsmanship of decades past. According to Dorothy, it had been installed by her husband's grandfather in 1923, when the restaurant first opened. The young woman knelt before the appliance, ignoring Thomas's sarcastic remarks. She had grown up watching her mother fix everything that broke at home. Margaret always said old things were built to last, but also to be understood by those with patience. As she examined every detail of the oven, Emily noticed something odd. On the lower left side, there was a slight difference in the metal's color, as if someone had soldered something there. She ran her fingers over the surface and felt an almost imperceptible irregularity. "What are you doing?" Dorothy asked, stepping closer curiously. "This spot here looks different from the rest," Emily murmured, focused. "Almost like a little door." Thomas rolled his eyes. "Now she's inventing secret compartments? It's an oven, not a safe." But Emily kept examining. She pressed, pushed, tried to turn it. Suddenly she heard an almost inaudible click. A small panel opened, revealing an empty space the size of a shoebox. Dorothy widened her eyes. "Good heavens, in 50 years of living here, I never knew about this secret drawer." Emily slid her hand into the compartment and found something. It was an envelope yellowed with time, sealed with red wax. Carefully, she removed it and handed it to Dorothy. "Mrs. Wilson, I think this is for you." The elderly woman's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside were 2 sheets of paper, handwritten in faded blue ink. The handwriting was elegant, like someone educated in the old days. "To whoever finds this letter," Dorothy read aloud, her voice choked, "I, Francesco Rossi, leave here the instructions for the oven I built for the Wilson family. May it be found only by those who truly care for this place. Thomas stepped closer, skeptical. This must be some kind of prank. Francesco Rossi? I never heard of him. That was the name of the Italian who built this oven, Dorothy whispered, her eyes misty. My father-in-law always told stories about him, but we thought they were just legends. Emily continued reading the letter over her employer's shoulder. The text explained that the oven had a special ventilation system that worked through a specific sequence of levers and buttons. More importantly, it revealed there was a movable piece inside the chimney that needed manual adjustment every 6 months. According to this, Emily said, studying the rudimentary diagram on the paper, there's a metal latch that loosens over time. When it comes loose, it blocks the hot air. And how do you plan to get to it? Thomas mocked. Gonna crawl inside like a pizza. Emily ignored the sarcasm and turned her attention back to the letter. Francesco had been thorough. He explained that the latch could be accessed by removing a specific grate inside the oven and using a long tool to reposition it. There's more written here at the bottom, Dorothy murmured. This oven carries the heart of the Wilson family. Whoever keeps it running will be blessed with prosperity and unity. Signed, Francesco Rossi, March 15th, 1923. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Even Thomas seemed impressed by the discovery. Emily, however, was already examining the inside of the oven, searching for the grate mentioned in the letter. Here, she exclaimed, pointing to a grate that looked different from the others. This one doesn't have the same screws. Carefully, she removed the grate and shone her phone's flashlight inside. There it was, a small metal latch hanging loose beside where it should have been fitted. I need something long and thin to push it back into place. George, who had been watching quietly, brought over a long barbecue skewer. Will this do, miss? Emily smiled at the man in his 60s who had always been kind to her. Perfect, Mr. George, thank you. With delicate movements, she inserted the skewer into the oven and began working on the latch. It was a tedious process, requiring patience and precision. With each attempt, she adjusted it slightly, following the letter's instructions meticulously. Thomas crossed his arms, clearly annoyed at not being the center of attention. This is a waste of time. If it were that simple, someone would have figured it out already. Maybe no one looked hard enough, Emily retorted, without taking her eyes off her task. After 15 minutes of careful work, she heard a metallic click. The latch had snapped perfectly into place. There, she said, stepping back from the oven. Now let's test it. Dorothy approached the control panel with trembling hands. She turned the ignition key and... nothing. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. I knew it, Thomas muttered. Another failure, but Emily checked the manual again. Wait, here it says that after repositioning the latch, you need to let the oven breathe for a few minutes before trying to light it. Breathe, repeated Jennifer, confused. The hot air needs to circulate and find the right path, explained Emily. It's like when you uncork a bottle of wine. You have to give it time for the air to get in. They waited 5 long minutes. Dorothy tried again. This time they heard the familiar sound of gas flowing, followed by the click of the ignition. A steady blue flame began to dance inside the oven. It worked, shouted Jennifer, clapping her hands. Dorothy started crying, hugging Emily tightly. Blessed girl, you saved my restaurant. Thomas was pale, clearly shaken that someone he considered beneath him had outdone him. But his surprise soon turned to anger. Just luck, he muttered. Anyone could have found that stupid manual. But no one did, said Mr. George with a smile. Only her. That night, after everyone had left, Dorothy called Emily for a private talk in her office on the upper floors. The room was cozy, with antique furniture and yellowed photographs on the walls. Sit here, dear, said Dorothy, pointing to a green velvet armchair. I need to talk to you. Emily obeyed, nervous. Was she being fired? Had Thomas convinced the boss that she was overstepping? You know this restaurant is all I have, Dorothy began. My husband Robert passed 12 years ago. My son Richard has lived in England for over 20 years and rarely checks in. This place is my family. I understand, Mrs. Dorothy. Lately I've been thinking a lot about the future. I can't carry this weight alone anymore. I needed a sign, a direction. And today, you gave me that. Dorothy opened a drawer and pulled out some papers. I want to make you an offer. If you agree to be my minority partner, sharing 20% of the profits, we can modernize the menu, attract younger customers, breathe new life into Heritage House. Emily was speechless. 20% of a restaurant? That was more money than she'd ever dreamed of making in her lifetime. But Mrs. Dorothy, I don't know anything about running a business. But you have heart, and that's what's been missing here these past years. Thomas cooks well, but he has no soul. You found something 25 experts couldn't because you genuinely cared. And what will Chef Thomas say? Dorothy's face hardened. Thomas works for me, not the other way around. If he doesn't like the change, he can find another job. Emily stayed awake all night thinking about the offer. It was an incredible opportunity, but also terrifying. The next morning, she arrived at work, determined to accept. But when she entered the kitchen, she found a tense atmosphere. Thomas was at the center, speaking loudly to the other staff. That's exactly what you heard. The boss wants to make an inexperienced waitress a partner. It's an insult to all of us who've worked here for years. Good morning, said Emily, trying to keep her voice steady. Thomas turned to her with a cruel smile. Look who's here, our new partner. Hope you're ready to find out that fixing an oven is the easiest part of running a restaurant. Thomas, there's no need for this. Michael tried to intervene. No need for what? Honesty? Realism? Thomas raised his voice. Do you all think it's normal for a waitress who's been here 8 months to become a partner in a century-old business? Emily felt her heart race, but she took a deep breath before answering. I didn't ask to be a partner. Mrs. Dorothy made the offer, and if you have a problem with it, you should talk to her, not me. Oh, is that so? Thomas took a step toward her. So you're really accepting this nonsense? Yes, I am, and I hope we can work together for the good of the restaurant. The chef let out a sarcastic laugh. Work together? Girl, you can't even tell salt from sugar. How are you going to make decisions about the menu, suppliers, business strategies? I'll learn just like you did once. I studied. I have a degree. I have experience. And I have the desire to learn and make this place grow, Emily shot back, feeling a courage she didn't know she had. Thomas was about to respond when Dorothy walked into the kitchen. She immediately sensed the tension in the air. Did something happen? Nothing, Mrs. Wilson, Emily said quickly. We were just talking about today's routine. Thomas glared at her but said nothing. Dorothy wasn't foolish. She knew her chef well and could tell when he was stirring up trouble. Thomas, I need to speak with you in my office, now. The two went upstairs, leaving an uncomfortable silence in the kitchen. Jennifer approached Emily. Don't mind him, okay? Thomas has always been like this when he feels threatened. Threatened? Emily didn't understand. He knows you did something he never could, Michael explained. That stings his pride. Upstairs, Dorothy didn't mince words with Thomas. Listen carefully, Thomas. Emily is going to be my partner, and that's not up for discussion. If you can't accept that and work harmoniously with her, I can arrange your recommendation letters for other restaurants. Mrs. Wilson, with all due respect, you're making a mistake. That girl has no qualifications. She has something you've lost over the years, humility and real dedication. Yesterday she did in 2 hours what you couldn't in 3 months. That was luck. It was intelligence and perseverance, 2 qualities any business owner values. Thomas realized he was losing the battle. Fine, Mrs. Wilson. I'll accept your decision. But when it goes wrong, don't say I didn't warn you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Over the following weeks, Emily threw herself into learning. She arrived 2 hours early every day to study accounting books with Dorothy. She stayed late, observing every movement in the kitchen, memorizing recipes, understanding the rhythm of the work. Thomas maintained a cold, professional demeanor, responding only when necessary and avoiding any interaction beyond what was strictly work-related. But Emily noticed he had started making small mistakes: over-seasoning, incorrect cooking times, forgotten ingredients. He's doing it on purpose, Jennifer remarked one afternoon when Thomas had added too much salt to the white sauce. "We can't prove that," Emily replied. "And if we start accusing him without being sure, we'll make the environment even worse." But the situation worsened when it came time to renew supplier contracts. Dorothy decided to include Emily in the negotiations so she could learn that part of the business. "Let's start with the meat supplier," Dorothy said. "Mr. Miller is a man of his word. He's been supplying us for 15 years. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning. Frank Miller was a sturdy man in his 50s with calloused hands from years of hard work. He greeted Dorothy warmly, but looked at Emily with curiosity. "This is Emily, my new partner," Dorothy introduced. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Miller," Emily said, extending her hand. The supplier shook it, but she noticed a hint of reservation in his eyes. "Mrs. Wilson, can I speak frankly?" "Of course, Frank. It's always been that way between us." "Are you sure about this decision? The girl seems too young for this kind of responsibility." Emily felt her face grow warm, but Dorothy stood firm. "Frank, Emily saved my restaurant when no one else could. I trust her completely." All right. You're the boss. Let's talk prices then." During the negotiation, Emily remained silent, absorbing every detail. Frank presented his prices, Dorothy negotiated some adjustments, and they reached an agreement. But as they were finalizing, Emily noticed something odd. "Mr. Frank, may I ask a question?" "Of course, dear." "The price for the sirloin you're charging is 15% higher than what I saw at the Central Market yesterday. Is there a specific reason?" Frank and Dorothy were surprised. The supplier shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, it's just, our cattle is of superior quality." "I understand," Emily said calmly, "but could you adjust the price? It would really help our budget." Frank glanced at Dorothy, who gave a subtle nod. "I can give you a 10% discount on the sirloin." "Thank you, Mr. Frank, that will help a lot." After the supplier left, Dorothy looked at Emily, impressed. "How did you know the price was high?" "Yesterday, I went to the Central Market to check other suppliers, just as you suggested. I wrote down all the prices to compare." "Well done. You saved us a good amount." Frank has always been honest, but sometimes he tries to push a little extra. It's understandable. He has his costs too. Emily's cautious and respectful attitude caught the attention not only of Dorothy, but also the staff who witnessed the scene. She was showing she took the responsibility seriously, without being arrogant or overbearing. Thomas, however, didn't see this progress in a good light. "Now she wants to play manager too," he muttered to Michael. "Next, she'll want to change traditional recipes." As if prophesied, the following week, Emily suggested a small menu adjustment. "Mrs. Dorothy, I have an idea," she said during a conversation in the office. "What if we offered a lighter version of our shrimp gumbo? Many customers say they love the flavor but find it too heavy." "Tinkering with traditional recipes is risky, dear." "I know, but we could offer both versions, the traditional one and a light one, using light coconut milk and less cayenne pepper." Dorothy considered the suggestion. "That makes sense. We've had customers asking for healthier options, but Thomas will hate the idea." "Then let's talk to him together. Explain it's not about replacing the original recipe, but expanding our options." The conversation with Thomas went exactly as Dorothy had predicted. "Light gumbo? That's an insult to Southern cuisine," he exploded. "Do you want to turn Heritage House into a diet restaurant?" "Thomas, calm down," Dorothy tried to mediate. "It's just an additional option." "No, traditional recipes don't get changed. If people don't like it, they can eat somewhere else." Emily took a deep breath before speaking. "Chef Thomas, may I suggest we try it for a month? If it doesn't work, we'll take it off the menu. You don't understand anything about cooking. You can't tell tradition from a passing trend." "It's true, I'm still learning. But I also listen to our customers, and many have asked for lighter options." "Customers?" Thomas waved a dismissive hand. "Customers don't know what they want. Our job is to educate their palates, not cater to whims." Dorothy stepped in. "Thomas, we're testing it. It's an administrative decision." The chef stormed out, slamming the door. Emily sighed. "Maybe I should back down." "No, dear, your idea is good. Thomas is stubborn, but he'll have to accept it." The new dish's implementation brought positive results. Within 2 weeks, the light gumbo was among the top 5 most ordered dishes. Several customers praised the initiative, and some said they'd return more often because of the healthier options. Thomas grew even more resentful. He started making sarcastic remarks in front of customers. Light gumbo? Of course, we have adapted versions for those who don't appreciate real Southern cuisine, he'd say whenever someone placed the order. Emily tried talking to him privately. "Chef Thomas, can we talk for a minute? If it's about another one of your revolutionary changes, I don't have time. It's about the work environment. I feel there's unnecessary tension between us." "The tension exists because you're changing things that worked perfectly fine for decades. I'm trying to help the restaurant grow. This isn't against you or the traditions." Thomas glared at her coldly. "Emily, you might have fooled Dorothy with your Cinderella story, but I know people like you. Soon enough, you'll want to fire me and take over the kitchen." "That never crossed my mind. I couldn't cook even a tenth of what you can." "Then why don't you stay in your place as a waitress?" The conversation was interrupted by Dorothy's arrival, who noticed the tension immediately. "Is everything all right here?" "Everything's fine, Dorothy," Thomas replied with a forced smile. "Just discussing the menu." That evening, Dorothy called Emily back into the office. "Dear, I need to tell you something important. It might help you understand the situation with Thomas better." "What is it, Dorothy?" "My husband Robert passed away leaving some debts. For years I managed everything just fine, but the last 5 years have been harder. Thomas knows this." "How so?" "He always thought that when I couldn't run the restaurant alone anymore, he'd be promoted to partner. I even mentioned the possibility to him a few times." Emily's heart raced. "And now he thinks I stole his place?" "Exactly. Not that I was obligated to keep an informal promise, but I understand his resentment. Maybe I should talk to him about it." "No, dear, you've done nothing wrong. My decision was based on what's best for the restaurant. Thomas will have to accept it or find another job." But the situation was about to get much more complicated. The next morning, Emily arrived at work to find the kitchen in chaos. Dorothy was pale, sitting in a chair with papers scattered on the table. "What happened, Dorothy?" "The IRS came for a surprise inspection," Dorothy said, her voice trembling. "They said there are irregularities in our accounting from the last 2 years. Emily felt a chill in her stomach. "What kind of irregularities?" "I don't know yet. They took all the financial records and said they'd return next week with the results." Thomas, who had arrived shortly after, overheard the conversation. "Well, partner," he said sarcastically, "how do you plan to fix this little problem?" "Thomas, this isn't the time," Dorothy scolded. "Sorry, Dorothy, but I think it's exactly the time. You two were busy playing with changes and innovations, and now the authorities show up asking about our finances." Emily felt unfairly accused. "The changes we suggested have nothing to do with accounting." "Oh, really? What about the new suppliers you want to hire, the discounts you're negotiating, all that affects cash flow?" But always with Dorothy's approval. The argument was cut short by the arrival of a well-dressed man in a suit. He was tall, blonde, with features vaguely resembling Dorothy's. "Mom, I heard what happened," he said, kissing the older woman's cheek. "Richard," Dorothy exclaimed, emotional. "I wasn't expecting you." Emily immediately realized this was Dorothy's son who lived in England. Richard Wilson must have been about 45 years old and carried himself like a successful businessman. "I got your email about the oven issues, and then that call about the IRS. I thought it best to come see the situation in person." Dorothy introduced Emily to Richard. "This is Emily, my new business partner. She's the one who fixed the oven." Richard looked at Emily with clear skepticism. "Pleasure to meet you," he said, shaking her hand without much enthusiasm. "Mom, can we talk in private?" They went up to the office, leaving Emily in the kitchen with the other staff. Thomas didn't miss the opportunity. "Well, now the son's here to set things straight. I bet he won't like this whole partnership with a waitress business one bit." "Thomas, stop it," said Michael. "You're being unkind." "Unkind? I'm being realistic. The guy lives in England, has international experience, and comes here to find his mother splitting the family business with a stranger. Emily tried to stay busy organizing the inventory, but she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation happening upstairs. Could Richard dissolve the partnership? Technically, as the only child, he was the natural heir to the restaurant. After nearly an hour, Dorothy and Richard came down. The older woman's face was red, as if she'd been crying or arguing. Richard looked determined. "Emily, can I talk to you?" he said. "Of course." They moved to an isolated table in the restaurant's dining area. Richard got straight to the point. "My mother told me about your agreement. I need to be honest. I don't agree with this decision." Emily swallowed hard but tried to keep her composure. "May I ask why?" "Nothing personal against you, understand, but this restaurant has been our family's legacy for 100 years. I don't think it's wise to share ownership with someone who isn't family." "I understand your concern, but your mother was struggling. I only tried to help. And I appreciate that. But helping doesn't mean becoming a 20% owner." Emily took a deep breath. "What are you suggesting?" "A more appropriate arrangement. I can offer you a generous bonus for fixing the oven, say $5,000, and a substantial raise." It was a lot of money for Emily, but something inside her rebelled at the offer. "And if I don't accept?" Richard's tone hardened. "Look, Emily, I'll be clear. With the IRS issues, my mother will need professional help. I'm willing to invest in the restaurant, modernize everything, hire specialized consultants. But for that, I need full control. Did your mother agree to this? My mother is emotional and tired. Sometimes we need to protect the people we love from hasty decisions." Emily stood up. "I need to think about your offer. Don't take too long. I plan to resolve this by the end of the week." That night, Emily barely slept. She felt like she was living a nightmare. In just a few days, she'd gone from waitress to partner, and now she was being pressured to give it all up. The next day, she arrived early at the restaurant and found Dorothy alone in the office, sorting through papers with a worried look. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson. How are you?" "Confused, dear, very confused. I spoke with your son yesterday." "I know, he told me." Dorothy looked up, her eyes red. "Emily, I need to apologize." "Why?" "Richard made me realize I may have been hasty in making you a partner. Not that you don't deserve it, but he's your son and has rights to the restaurant," Emily finished. "It's more complicated than that. Richard said he can invest a considerable amount to modernize everything, pay off the debts, settle the IRS issues, but only if he has full control." Emily felt her heart tighten. "And you want me to give up my share in the business?" Dorothy began to cry. "I don't want to. You saved this place, brought new ideas, gave me hope again. But Richard is my only son, and if he's willing to help—" "I understand, Mrs. Wilson. I accept his offer." "You do?" Dorothy seemed surprised. "Yes, I do. It was never about the money for me. I just wanted to help save this place that's become my second home." Dorothy stood up and hugged Emily tightly. "You're a special girl. Very special." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. But when Richard arrived a few hours later to formalize the agreement, he brought news that would change everything. "Mom, I need to tell you something. I spoke to my lawyer in England about the restaurant's situation." "What situation?" Dorothy asked. "The bank debt. You didn't tell me you're 3 months behind on the loan payments." Dorothy turned pale. "How did you find out?" "The bank manager called me. You listed me as a guarantor 2 years ago, remember?" "Oh my God. I'd forgotten." "If we don't pay it off in 2 weeks, they'll foreclose. The restaurant will be auctioned." Emily felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Dorothy began to sob uncontrollably. "Kids, I didn't know what else to do. Business has slowed so much this past year, the numbers just didn't add up." "How much is the debt?" Emily asked. $85,000, Richard replied, plus interest and penalties. It was an astronomical sum for Emily, but she had to know. "And do you have that money?" Richard hesitated. "It's complicated. My capital is all tied up in the business in England. I can get some of it, but it would take a few months." "Months we don't have," Dorothy murmured. At that moment, Emily made a decision that would surprise everyone. I have a different proposal. Richard and Dorothy looked at her. What proposal? Richard asked. I know someone who can help, but first I need guarantees that Heritage House will keep running as it always has, respecting its traditions and employees. Who is this person? Richard pressed. It's hard to explain, but trust me, I just need 2 days. Dorothy nodded, but Richard was skeptical. Emily, this isn't a joke. We're talking about nearly $100,000. I know, just give me 2 days. That afternoon, Emily took a bus to Atlanta. She hadn't told anyone, but after her mother passed, she discovered that Margaret had a small savings account, built up over years of sacrifice. It was exactly $93,000. Her mother had always dreamed of buying a modest house where they could live with dignity. But life had other plans, and she passed before realizing that dream. Emily had kept the money, unsure what to do with it. At the bank, after explaining the situation to the manager, she transferred the entire amount to an account that would cover the restaurant's debt. She returned to Charleston the next morning, the receipt in her bag and her heart heavy. She was about to use her mother's inheritance to save another family's business. She found Dorothy and Richard in the office, discussing desperate options. I got the money, Emily announced, showing the receipt. The two stared at the paper in shock. How? Dorothy whispered. It was my mother's savings. She always wanted to buy a house, but, well, now I can use it to save a house that already exists. Richard examined the receipt carefully. Emily, this is incredibly generous, but I can't let you spend your mother's inheritance on our problems. It's not spending, it's an investment. How so? Emily took a deep breath. I had thought a lot during the trip. I want to propose a new deal. In exchange for settling the debt, I become the majority owner of the restaurant, 51%. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard was stunned. You're serious? Completely, Mrs. Dorothy keeps 49% and continues living here. The restaurant stays in the Wilson family, but with new management. And what about me? Asked Richard. You're welcome to be involved whenever you want, but Heritage House needs someone who's here, present every day. Dorothy looked back and forth between her son and Emily, still processing the offer. Dear, are you sure about what you're doing? I am, Mrs. Dorothy. This place has become my family. I want to save it not just from debt, but give it a prosperous future. Richard stood up and walked to the window. It's a fair offer, he admitted after a few minutes. Fairer than what I proposed to you yesterday. So you accept? I do, but with one condition. What is it? I want to participate in management via video calls, help with marketing strategies, international partnerships, those kinds of things. After all, I'm still Mrs. Dorothy's son. Emily smiled. That would be great. Your international experience could add a lot. Dorothy stood up and hugged Emily. Blessed child, how can I ever thank you? By keeping Heritage House the special place it's always been. The news of the ownership change sparked mixed reactions among the staff. Thomas was furious. Now she's the boss, this is the end of the world. Michael, on the other hand, was optimistic. Maybe it's good for everyone. Emily has always been fair with us. George just smiled. I knew that girl was different from day one. Jennifer and Sarah were curious about how the changes would unfold. Emily gathered all the staff in the main dining room and gave a short speech. Everyone, I know change is scary, but I want to make it clear, you are the heart of this restaurant. No one will be fired. No one will have their pay cut. On the contrary, when we increase revenue, everyone will benefit. What about the traditional recipes? Thomas asked defiantly. They'll all stay on the menu. We'll just add some new options, always respecting Heritage House's identity. And who decides these new options? We'll decide together. I want to hear suggestions from all of you, especially yours, Chef Thomas. You know this kitchen better than anyone. Emily's respectful approach surprised Thomas. He expected to be treated as a subordinate, but she was offering a partnership. Well, I do have some ideas for modernizing a few dishes without losing their essence. I'd love to hear them. How about we schedule a meeting just to discuss the menu? In the following days, Emily worked tirelessly to implement improvements. She hired a new accountant to resolve issues with the IRS, renegotiated contracts with suppliers, updated the payment system to accept cards. But the most significant change came when she decided to explore the history of the oven and Francesco Rossi's letter. "Mrs. Dorothy, does anyone in the family know more details about this Francesco? My father-in-law used to say he was an extraordinary craftsman. He built ovens for several prominent families in South Carolina in the 1920s. Do you have any other documents about the restaurant's history? There's a trunk in the attic with old papers. I never had time to sort through them properly." Emily went up to the attic and found a real treasure: old photos, receipts, letters, documents that told 100 years of Heritage House's history. Among the papers, she found something surprising. It was a yellowed, fragile newspaper clipping from 1924. The headline read, "Italian craftsman creates revolutionary oven for Wilson family." The text explained that Francesco Rossi had developed a special ventilation technique that allowed for even cooking in very large ovens. Even more interesting, the article mentioned that Francesco had left secret instructions in every oven he built, so only the true owners could perform proper maintenance. "Mrs. Dorothy," shouted Emily, running downstairs with the clipping. "Look at this." Dorothy examined the paper carefully. "My goodness, I've never seen this before. Where did you find it?" "In the trunk in the attic, and there's more interesting stuff up there." They spent the rest of the afternoon cataloging the documents. They discovered original recipes, photos from the opening day, letters from famous customers who frequented the restaurant in the 1930s and 1940s. "Emily, do you realize what this means?" Dorothy said, emotional. "What? We could create a culinary museum. Tell the story of Heritage House, of Francesco, of Charleston's cooking traditions. This could attract tourists from all over the world." The idea was brilliant. Emily immediately envisioned the possibilities: guided tours, themed tastings, partnerships with historic hotels, promoting culinary tourism. "We should talk to Richard about this," Emily said. "He could help with international connections." That evening they had a video call with Richard, who was thrilled by the discovery. "It's genius, Boines," he said, from England. "I can connect you with European travel agencies that organize culinary tours through the United States." "And there's more," Emily added. "We could partner with other historic restaurants in the area, create a South Carolina culinary circuit." "You're thinking big. I like it," Richard laughed. "But implementing all these ideas would require investment and careful planning." Emily decided to start small, renovating a room on the upper floor to house a small exhibit about the restaurant's history. Thomas, who had overheard part of the conversation, approached after the call ended. "Emily, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Chef. I want to apologize for my behavior these past few weeks. I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of losing my place, of being replaced by someone younger and more qualified. When you became a partner, I thought it was only a matter of time before you fired me." Emily was surprised by his honesty. "Thomas, it never crossed my mind to fire you. You're the heart of this kitchen." "Really?" "Of course, I have so much to learn from you. And if we're going to create this culinary museum, we need someone who deeply understands the cooking traditions here." You'd want me to help with that?" "I'd love that. In fact, I was thinking of proposing you become our official executive chef. With a raise, of course." Thomas looked moved. "Thank you, Emily. Truly. I behaved poorly, but you're being so generous with me. We all make mistakes when we're scared or unsure. What matters is that we learn and move forward." At that moment, Emily realized she had found something she didn't know she was looking for: a real family. Not just Dorothy and Richard, but all the staff who, each in their own way, cared about the success of Heritage House. 2 weeks later, the small exhibit was ready. Old photos decorated the walls, historical documents were displayed in frames, and the centerpiece was a replica of Francesco's letter, translated into English and Spanish. The opening attracted more people than they expected: local journalists, food bloggers, curious tourists, and Charleston residents who wanted to learn the story behind the restaurant they had visited for years. During the event, an elegant gentleman with white hair approached Emily. "Are you the young woman who found Francesco's letter?" he asked with an Italian accent. "Yes, that's me." And you are? Anthony Rossi, great-grandson of Francesco. Emily Parker was stunned. I can't believe it. How did you hear about the discovery? I saw the article in the online newspaper. My family always wondered about the whereabouts of the letters my great-grandfather hid in the ovens. Letters, so there are more? Of course. Francesco built 17 ovens in South Carolina, each with its own secret instructions. You found the first one. The revelation opened even greater possibilities. Anthony explained he was coming to the United States for work and decided to stop in Charleston to visit the Heritage House. May I see the original letter? He asked. Dorothy brought the carefully preserved document. Anthony examined it with emotion. It's his handwriting, no doubt. And look here. He pointed to a symbol in the corner of the letter. This mark means this oven was special. Francesco only used this symbol for the ovens he considered his masterpieces. What does that mean? Emily asked. It means you're holding something truly unique. This oven was made with a technique my great-grandfather developed specifically for Charleston's climate. Anthony spent the rest of the afternoon sharing stories about Francesco and his passion for creating perfect ovens. As he was leaving, he made an unexpected proposal. Emily, I work in culinary marketing in Italy. I'd like to propose a partnership. What kind of partnership? We could organize a culinary exchange, bring Italian chefs here to learn about Southern cooking, and take chefs from here to explore the traditions of Tuscany, where Francesco was born. Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing. That would be amazing. And there's more. If you agree, I can feature the Heritage House in a documentary I'm producing about my great-grandfather's historic ovens. Dorothy, who had been listening tearfully, began to cry. Francesco would be so proud to know his work is still bringing people and cultures together after 100 years. In the following months, the Heritage House became a culinary landmark, not just in Charleston, but across the state. Anthony's documentary was screened at international food festivals, attracting visitors from around the world. Emily launched a guided tour program that included the oven's history, tastings of traditional dishes, and even Southern cooking workshops. Thomas proved to be an excellent teacher, sharing his knowledge with enthusiasm. The restaurant's revenue tripled in 6 months. Emily was able to hire more staff, give raises to the existing team, and still invest in continuous improvements. But perhaps the most meaningful change was personal. Emily discovered she had a talent for management and leadership. Dorothy became like a mother to her, and Richard fully accepted her as a sister. You know, Dorothy said one evening as they organized the office, I never had a daughter. Robert and I tried for years to have more children after Michael, but it never happened. Mrs. Wilson, let me finish, dear. When you showed up here, I thought God had sent an angel to save my restaurant. But now I know he sent much more than that. He sent the daughter I always wanted. Emily was moved. You've become the mother I lost. This place gave me a new family. And it will always be your family, no matter what happens. A year after the letter's discovery, the Heritage House received an award as Best Historic Restaurant in South Carolina. The ceremony was held at the restaurant itself, attended by local officials, food critics, and tourism representatives. During her acceptance speech, Emily looked at the team gathered in the main dining room. This award isn't mine, it belongs to all of us, to Mrs. Wilson, who preserved these traditions for decades, from Chef Thomas, who keeps the soul of South Carolina cuisine alive, from Mr. George, who lovingly tends to every detail, from Jennifer and Sarah, who welcome our guests like family, from Michael, who blends tradition and innovation, and also from Francesco Rossi, who planted a seed 100 years ago that still bears fruit today. After the applause, she continued, but above all, this award is proof that when we work together, with respect and dedication, there's no problem we can't solve, no dream we can't achieve. When the ceremony ended and the guests had left, Emily stood alone in the hall, gazing at the century-old oven that had changed her life. She thought of her mother, who would surely be proud. She thought of Francesco's letter, which had waited patiently for decades until someone with a pure heart found it. Thomas approached, interrupting her thoughts. Emily, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you give up? when I was cruel to you, when Richard offered you money to leave, when all the problems piled up. Why did you keep fighting?" Emily smiled. "Because my mother taught me that the most precious things in life aren't the ones that come easily. They're the ones we earn through hard work, patience, and love. Your mother was a wise woman. She was. And I think she'd be happy to know that the money she saved with such sacrifice was used to create something beautiful. More than beautiful. It was used to create a legacy." The end of the story. Now, tell me what you thought of this touching story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a heartfelt comment below. Do you believe Emily made the right decisions throughout this journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts on how she handled each challenge. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like this video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other stories that will touch your heart just like this one did.